Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Frank B. Robinson to the pantheon of authors in the Reality Revolution. Dr. Franklin B. Robinson was an amazing New Thought author who developed a set of courses that people would get through the mail. This was back in the 20s and 30s. He'd advertise these courses in newspapers, and the courses became very popular. It almost became a sort of religion, but it wasn't. It was just a set of courses and instructions on using your God power and creating your reality. I recently did an episode with Henry Thomas Hamblin. That was also a set of lessons. So I'm going to do a few of these different books and teachings that were available in sets of lessons. In this particular case, in the Psychiana lessons, you can listen to or read them each individually. They all work on different aspects of reality creation, but they're all amazing lessons on the different aspects of reality creation and accessing your God power. And this one really talks about the law, the immutable law, and how it interacts in your life and how you can access and awaken this God power. He was a great writer and was a great teacher, and I think you'll love these lessons, especially if you're interested in creating material abundance and health and happiness. These are things he's talking about that go along with everything I've talked about on the podcast. Psychiana Advanced Course Number 1, Lesson 1. Dear friend, thanks very much for your enrollment in this course of instruction. I appreciate your confidence and value it very highly. I shall not say very much to you now, because I much prefer to let these lessons speak for themselves, which they usually do. Whenever possible, I personally read every letter coming to me from my students, and in my absence, they are read and answered by very capable assistants in your individual case. I want to help you if you can. As these marvelous lessons come to you, study them carefully, and as you apply the great spiritual law to your own life, you will find that this law is a very vital power which can bring to you the things you need. If there's anything about the lessons you do not understand, you may feel perfectly free to write me. Sincerely yours, Frank B. Robinson. At the beginning of our studies together, I have one regret, and that it is not possible for me to be seated in your home with you and talking with you face to face. You must realize that in a course of instruction such as this course is, and which is going all over the civilized world, I'm talking to people in every occupation of life and in every walk of life. Who you personally are, I have, of course, no way of knowing as I write this. Perhaps you are a professional man or woman. Perhaps you're a mail carrier working for Uncle Sam. Or maybe you are an auto mechanic, school teacher, minister, priest, or possibly you may be one of the unemployed. It makes no difference. However, for the great fundamental law governing and controlling health, happiness, and material abundance is no respecter of persons and operates with perfect precision in every human life. This mighty law takes no cognizance of a person's circumstances, but it operates with remarkable precision whenever and wherever it is used. So no matter who may be and no matter what your circumstances are, be prepared to receive some of the greatest spiritual truths which have ever been called to your attention. In fact, I am positive this startling revelation never has been brought to your attention before. If your circumstances are such that you have an abundance of wealth, perfect health, and perfect domestic happiness, then the law can bring to you an increased measure of these things, without which no life can be normal. For it never was meant to be that. You and I should be born on this earth and go down to the tomb fighting against failure, disease, and unhappiness. Such a thing is foreign to the eternal principle behind this scheme of things as it exists. And furthermore, it is not necessary that such a condition of affairs exist. Really, there is no need for such undesirable conditions of life, and these conditions only manifest through ignorance of a motivating principle which can and does absolutely operate to bring into existence conditions of a far different nature. It may be, however, that you are one of those engaged in one continuous struggle with unhappiness, ill health, lack of money, and business failure. And the world is full of such. There are millions living in this country today whose predominating thought is one of failure. They see men and women all around them making a success of life, and they marvel at the ability these fortunate ones seem to possess. But in their own case, failure and neglect of everything good manifests, and they consider the finest things of life far beyond their reach. They are dissatisfied with this, and they are dissatisfied with that. First they try this, and then they try that. But ever they are found to be chasing the elusive rainbow. Success does not come to them, nor does perfect health come to them. And as far as domestic happiness goes, they do not know what it is. The entire human race seems to be in the grip of what some psychologists call an inferiority complex, and there seems to be no possible way out of it. It is to such people as this that my message is direct more than to any other class. And if you are unfortunate enough to be a person from whom success, health, and happiness seems to steer clear, then I have a very vital message of hope for you. There is far more possibility of the law governing success, health, and happiness operating where there is no success, health, and happiness than there can be of this law operating in the lives of those who are already successful, happy, and enjoying perfect health. True, it is that those now enjoying these blessings of life may enjoy them to a far greater degree as they understand this mighty spiritual law. But you will readily see there is far more possibility of success, health, and happiness manifesting through the application of this mighty law. Where there never has been either success, happiness, or health, I drive along one of the beautiful California highways, and my car just glides along as if it had wings. The road is in perfect condition, and it would be absolute foolishness to send steam shovels, scrapers, and a crew of men out to repair a road of that kind. But what a different question on one of the bumpy side roads on which I sometimes get. On this road there is need of repair, and so in the human life, for only in the life which lacks success, health, and happiness, can these things be manifested, and only in such a life can they be appreciated. I am not an old man, by any means, but to the contrary, I am in the very prime of life, and never before could I do the volume of work I am doing today. And yet, for over 40 years, I was tossed hither and thither like a piece of driftwood on the bosom of the stormy ocean of life, vainly trying to achieve something worthwhile. First I tried this, and then I tried that, and tried hard too. But ever it seemed I was relentlessly pursued by this demon of poverty. I usually had good health, but never was really happy, and I do not think it is possible for people to be happy when they are denied the very things which tend to happiness. So I know whereof I speak when I say to you there is a law operating here and now, which law is abundantly able to provide you with everything you can possibly need to make your life abundantly happy, abundantly healthy, and abundantly successful. I'm going to show you in this course of instruction just exactly what the law is, and then naturally you will apply this law to your own life problems, and you should be able to drive poverty, ill health, and unhappiness completely out of your life as fast, as effectively as I did. So again, I say that my only regret is that I cannot be talking to you in your own home or from the lecture platform, in which case you would see me and I would probably be able to express myself much more forcibly than I can in writing. However, in less than 1 year's time, this teaching went all over the civilized globe, and my files are literally teeming with hundreds of letters which have come to me from all over the world, telling in unmistakable language of the benefits and changed circumstances brought about through the study of these lessons. There comes to my mind at this moment a letter I recently received from a lady in Oakland, California. This lady had been struggling consistently with several problems and never had been able to master them. Shortly after enrolling with us, however, we received one of the most remarkable letters of them all. The woman was gloriously happy, and she had discovered that the law worked. And to use her own words, she said, not only does this law work for happiness, but it brings results in a very material way. Back in St. Joseph, Michigan, is the head of a business. This person for years had been tortured with varicose veins in the leg. After having received our 4th lesson, however, this business executive received one of the most remarkable manifestations of instant healing through the law that has ever been called to my attention as the result of this study. This party stated that practically instantaneously the soreness and the pain left, and in 2 days all signs of swelling were gone, and he has never been bothered since. I merely mention these 2 cases in passing, but have hundreds of them in my files, and I know whereof I speak when I say to you that such a law exists. This course of instruction is entirely different from anything ever put into print before. Probably that is the reason for its remarkable success. It is complete in itself, and the person finishing these studies with me does not need to search elsewhere for the secret of health, happiness, and success, for this mighty law I teach is a complete law. Deep down somewhere in your nature, there is a longing and a desire to know what it is all about. I do not care what your religious experience or teachings have been, nor do I care whether you are living a life filled with the good things of life and are abundantly happy or not. I do not care whether you have $1 million in the bank or nothing at all, for there is still that unsatisfied longing to know the truth, not only of success, but the truth of life itself. I think it is safe to say that fear rules 99% of the lives in this country. This course of instruction will take that out, for when you and I understand this spiritual law, then fear will have no place in your makeup. We do not regret the past, nor do we fear the future, but we live moment by moment in the conscious realization of the actual presence of a power or law or spirit which is abundantly able to work with us for success, health, and happiness in the very moment in which we work with the law. You will discover that these lessons deal with the very fundamentals of life, for there can be no such thing as perfect health, domestic happiness, or success until men and women realize their relationship to the overruling law, which law is responsible for this created scheme of things as it exists. Some night, when the stars are shining brightly, get outside and look up into the heavens. You will see like a silver band girdling the celestial sphere, the Milky Way. Try and realize that the light from some of those myriad of stars comprising that Milky Way was on its way to this earth long before the earth was created. Look up at the sun someday through a smoked glass and try to realize the thought that flames from that ball of fire are leaping into the atmosphere in all directions as high as 150,000 miles or 5 times the circumference of this earth. Then, if you can, let your imagination roll still farther and realize that every one of those glowing diamonds of the heavens is but another such sun, many of them countless millions of light years away, as you are standing there looking at this celestial dome. Try to imagine the earth suddenly cut from under your feet, and then look down where you will see in your mind's eye the other half of the celestial sphere. Then realize, if you can, that you, standing there, are infinitely more intricate a physical system than are those entire heavens. Not one of those stars, satellites, or planets can make a mistake and swing out of its orbit, bringing destruction and disaster to the rest of the marvelous scheme. For behind them all, and spreading through them all, is the law I am here to speak to you about. You will admit with me that it is almost impossible to comprehend such a magnificent scheme as the heavens disclose. But it is not hard to understand that an eternal law is responsible for this. This same law is responsible for every success and every failure. Many successful men and women comply with the law unconsciously, and natural success follows. It is much more satisfactory, however, to intelligently work with and use this law than it is to use it unconsciously, and where it is consciously used, then it may be directed to whatever object is desired. And surely you will agree with me that if you and I can utilize the mighty law behind this universe for the things we need, then in that case, there cannot possibly be any lack, can there? I think I can safely say to you, whoever you may be, that when you realize what a dynamic power is placed into your hands by the knowledge of this law, you too, like hundreds of others, will write me expressing your happiness in words of wonder and joy. Raised in a very religious family, son of a prominent Baptist minister, for many years I suspected that those who were attempting to enlighten the rest of the world spiritually were off at a tangent. I don't think their motives can be questioned at all, but any thinking man or woman knows that these good brethren who have attempted to teach us something about God have made a miserable failure of their job. They cannot explain him, nor are they able to demonstrate any spiritual power of any kind, either in their own lives or in the lives of others. Many of them make a lot of noise. Many of them are specialists in religious emotion, and many more have amassed a fortune in an attempt to tell you and me something about the spiritual law or power responsible in its entirety for yonder heavens, this earth, and every created object, both animate and inanimate in existence. There lies on my desk at the present moment a letter from the Reverend Billy Sunday. This good brother is conducting a revival campaign in Canton, Ohio. This letter came to me a few days ago, and in it, Sunday attempts to take me to task for denying some of the things he preaches. Yesterday morning, in reply to that letter, I sent Billy Sunday the following telegram. Letter received. Stop. I challenge you to debate authenticity of Bible or Christian religion anywhere, anytime, any place. Stop. Consider you to be teaching pagan superstition and blinding minds of people to truth of God through your ignorance of Bible and Christian history. Stop. We'll put actual results of my teachings for past 2 years up against yours, and if I cannot show more results achieved by my students in 2 years than you can in 20 years, we'll quit the game, stop play your own game, but don't attempt to interfere with me, or I might call your bluff. Signed, Frank B. Robinson. I have hardly had time to receive a reply from Brother Sunday yet, and the chances are many to 1 that he will steer clear of any public debate with me on this subject. Not for worlds would I attempt to undermine anyone's religious faith. I went through theological school and know just about what the Orthodox religionists have to offer. I know just how much evidence they have in proof of their unusual story, and I also know how much evidence they have not. It will be sufficient to say here that I do not believe many of the fundamental truths of God are contained in any system of theology offered today. We have hundreds of them, and most of them fighting among themselves, and none of them having any basic truth on which they all agreed. When I discovered the way the spiritual law of God really works, the teachings and practices of most of the present-day religionists seemed very foolish to me, as they will to you when you discover something of the real power at your disposal. Under the old teachings for almost 40 years, I struggled with adversity, and I got nowhere. I was told, of course, that being a Christian, everything will be all right up yonder. But I began to wonder why it should be that the power so mighty that it could cause me to live forever in the sky could not do something tangible and material for me now. I reasoned that if all the power and manifestations of God, together with eternal life and perfect happiness, were reserved until after death, why would it not be a good thing to shoot myself and begin enjoying all this happiness and bliss right away? I do not see the logic of struggling along trying to make both ends meet, with all the good things of life reserved for some future period in some far-removed country to which we might go after death. I just simply could not see any sense or reason in such teachings. So being in earnest about this matter, and believing that nothing about God was really known, I formulated a philosophy of life and of God, and immediately put it to the test. This philosophy of life, while quite revolutionary, was formulated by me only after having absorbed everything the church had to offer, and practically everything the scientists and psychologists had to offer. It seemed to me that I caught a faint glimpse of a vital law running through these creeds, discoveries, and philosophies, which law might very easily answer the entire problem of life. I knew that it would hardly be possible for any of the many various teachings about God to be true and the whole world not know of it. For you may depend upon it that if any one body of people possesses the divine truth of the mighty creator of this universe, it would not take very long for all the rest of them to die by the weight of their own error. For you will discover on your journey with me that the creative power behind this universe is a law, and not a personality of any kind. You will also discover that the spiritual law, which is as free as the air we breathe, and quite as readily accessible, is no respecter of persons. You will find that the divine law would not secretly whisper its truths to the head of some religious organization, barring all who did not believe that way from ever knowing those truths. In fact, how foolish it is to consider for one moment that such might be the case. There is no religion higher than truth, and this you will also discover. You will find further that there need be no long waiting for actual results to be manifested by you through the power of the law I shall show you. So get ready to learn immediately how to throw off the shackles of ill health, poverty, and unhappiness, if it be that you are bound down by them. You say, well, did the law work for you? And in answer to that question, let me say that within 18 months of that day, I decided to put this mighty God law to work in my life. The picture had so changed that my success today is classed as one of the most outstanding transitions from poverty to affluence that this country has seen in many a year. 18 months ago, I had a job at a very mediocre salary. I lived in a rented apartment. I had no money, no life insurance, no car, and nothing between me and the poorhouse but this job. This was before I had decided to put myself in tune with the God law I believed to exist. The picture today, however, is entirely changed. I own a beautiful home, one of the finest homes in the city of Moscow. In this home is a wonderful pipe organ from which I derive lots of enjoyment. I drive one of the best cars in this city, and my life is covered by $65,000 worth of life insurance. In addition to that, I own the controlling stock in this corporation, which inside of 18 months had put some part or other of my teachings into 67 different countries. My articles have appeared in some of the leading national magazines in the realm of psychology. My 3 books are well known. And in addition to that, I added a magazine of national distribution. This is what the law did for me in only 18 months' time. Perhaps it would be better to say that this is what I was enabled to do through a knowledge of the law. My home surroundings are perfectly happy, and I have a standing credit at a bank in this country, and I assure you that I am no genius of any kind. In fact, for 40 years, I was one of the most complete failures the world has ever seen. But when a human being finds something of the workings of the spiritual God law, then let me assure you, things sometimes happen very fast. This law, being a law, is immutable in its workings. It does not change its operation to suit the needs of any one person, but is more than sufficient to supply every need. You may depend upon it that if there is any lack in your life, it is because the mighty spiritual God law is not being used by you. I understand that perfectly well, and the chances are many to 1 that you have never suspected that such a power existed. Certainly you never hoped that you might be able to use it for the manifestation of the things you desired, and therefore the revelations of this course of instruction will probably knock you off your feet and open your eyes wide to the dynamic possibilities at your disposal. I am now going to give you a simple little exercise to do. Before I give it to you, however, let me warn you that although this little exercise might seem simple, and to some probably foolish, the principle involved is the most dynamic principle in existence. So do not make the mistake of thinking that on account of the simplicity of this little exercise it has no value. That is exactly the trouble with the religious structure of the world today. It would not be satisfied with an everyday power close at hand, but it had to manufacture one, surrounded it with mystery, put it millions of miles away, and put its rewards in the future. Such a thing is 1,000,000 miles from the truth, and you will find this out before you have traveled very far along the road with me. It is only natural, is it not, if there be in existence a dynamic power, such as I claim, that the workings of this power must be so simple and so universal that it can be found and used by any normal man or woman. It is a pity that you and I had to be born under the shadow of a teaching which told us that we were born in sin and shapen in iniquity, that we should never know until we stood before a judgment throne in the sky whether we were doomed to eternal death or whether we had been found worthy of eternal life. No wonder fear predominates 99 9/10% of the people of this country in the face of such teachings as that. Psychiana, however, very effectively relegates that sort of teaching and that sort of a God into the dark ages from whence it came. We of Psychiana know, and we know beyond the shadow of a doubt, that the mighty dynamic power responsible for this creation does not operate according to such principles and beliefs, and never did. Herein lies my discovery, which discovery I am now passing on to you. This discovery and the power it teaches is a spiritual discovery and a spiritual power. Consequently, whatever exercises I prescribe for you to do will be designed to enable you to touch or to become acquainted with this same spiritual power. It may be, therefore, that some people may think that the simple little things which I ask you to do have no value and cannot possibly be instrumental in changing your life from one of illness, poverty, and unhappiness into one of overwhelming victory. Let me assure you, however, that such is not the case. In doing these exercises, I shall ask you to temporarily lay aside whatever ideas you may have of God. I don't say discard them entirely at this point, but just discard them for the time before many weeks have passed, that your previous thoughts and ideas of God are being revolutionized, and the smile of hope and anticipation will light your countenance, and for the first time you will begin to grasp something of the astounding possibilities lying in a correct understanding and use of the God law behind this universe, and particularly behind you. Little is this power understood, for if it were fully understood, there certainly would be no misery within and poverty all around us that there is now. The time is at hand, however, when the knowledge of the potent dynamic force about which you are to learn will be common knowledge, and the facts, as you are to learn them, will be universally known and used. You will receive from us one lesson every 2 weeks, and the exercises prescribed in each lesson must be continued until the next lesson arrived. These little exercises will cause you no inconvenience whatever. In fact, It will not be very long until you are more than willing to do them as many times as you possibly can. Furthermore, these exercises, being mostly mental, may be done either walking to work, eating, riding on the streetcar, or wherever you may be. It is advisable, if you possibly can, to have some definite hour and definite place in which you can give full attention to these studies without interruption from the outside. This is not absolute necessary truths. They deal with the spiritual law, and they go right into the very heart of the subject of man and his relation to the greatest power this world has ever known, the power of the God law. Hence, you need have no hesitation in doing as I ask you to do, for you must remember that I am the teacher and you are the student. I may know nothing about railroad engineering. I may know nothing about radio. I may know nothing about mixing explosives, and I may know nothing about physics. But I do know something about spiritual law and its effect upon a human life. I know there is an unseen power in this universe, which power can do what is usually looked upon as supernatural. As a matter of fact, however, there is nothing supernatural in the universe, and those things which may seem supernatural only seem so because of a lack of recognition or understanding of the law involved. As you become acquainted with this law, and as you demonstrate a little of its power in your own life, you will find the petty annoyances of life as well as the major struggles will begin to worry you a whole lot less. You will probably not be able to explain just how or why this is so, but you will know beyond any shadow of a reasonable doubt that something is happening in your mental makeup which is changing you for the better. There will probably be a marked and noticeable feeling of better health generally. If it should be that you are suffering from some functional or organic disease, you will find that the utilization of the life principle you are now dealing with will have a tendency to alleviate such conditions. I am personally convinced that if you and I understood the law I am teaching you now as Jesus understood it, every authentic work he did would be possible for you and me, for the great God law is no respecter of persons. In Billy Sunday's letter, which I hold in my hand, he says, I challenge you or your followers to raise the dead, open the eyes of the blind, cast cut devils, heal diseases, still the tempest, and forgive sinners. I'm afraid, however, that I will have to check Brother Sunday on those statements. As far as raising the dead, no one to date has ever been known to have raised a dead man, and neither can Brother Sunday, nor any preacher or theological professor prove that Jesus raised the dead either. There has never been known to exist one original manuscript covering this Bible story, nor was there ever known to exist one single eyewitness to any of the supposed miracles of Christ, nor was there ever known to exist anyone ever having seen such an eyewitness. As a matter of fact, belief in the divinity of Jesus Christ did not come into existence until hundreds of years after he died. It was not believed then, and nowhere did Jesus claim to be God, or to have any power to the exclusion of everybody else. On the contrary, he very specifically stated, "The things that I do shall you do also." And as far as raising the dead goes, let me say this. If Jesus ever raised a dead man to life through this understanding of spiritual law, then it is my candid opinion that when you and I understand spiritual law as he must have understood it, we shall be able to duplicate every authentic work that this man did. But Billy Sunday and the rest of them will have to prove to my satisfaction a good many things they are asking us to believe on faith before I shall believe them. If Brother Sunday were sitting in my office here with me now instead of being on that platform in Canton, Ohio, I should show him letters and telegrams which would convince him beyond the shadow of a doubt that disease of every kind is powerless before the mighty law of God. As far as casting out devils goes, in those days, everyone suffering from any disease or illness was supposed to be possessed of a devil, and hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women, and children were burned alive at the stake by Christians because they were presumed to be practicing witchcraft. Today, instead of casting out devils, we of Psychiana are applying the spiritual law as Jesus did. As far as forgiving sins goes, the only sin I know anything about is the sin of living in poverty, unhappiness, and ill health, when there is at the disposal of all the same mighty God law that Jesus used. They did not believe him then, and they do not believe him now. Instead of trying to understand the simplicity of the law, he taught certain religious fanatics conceived the bright idea of making God out of him, and then telling those who would not accept that story that if they did not believe that, they would all go to hell. Thousands of years before the time of Christ, many more millions crucified, and they all rose from the dead, and they were all a combination of God and man. So there is nothing original at all in the story given us today by those posing as agents of God, nor after 2,000 years of teaching can we say that such a doctrine is much more than a failure. However, those wishing to follow those teachings are at perfect liberty to do so, as far as I am concerned, and I have no quarrel with them at all. They will reap the benefit of such beliefs, while we of Psychiana will reap the benefit of our teachings here and now in a material, substantial way. The other folks get theirs in the future after they die. Now, to come back to our little mental exercise, which I shall ask you to do faithfully, the very fact that you sent an inquiry to me regarding Psychiana is evidence that you were interested, and the fact that you have enrolled for this course of instruction is further evidence to me that you really do want to be successful, healthy, and happy. This is the point at which you will have to do your part and cooperate by actually doing the simple little things I ask you to do. I'm not asking very much, and on the very start of our studies together, I want to impress upon you the necessity of playing ball with me throughout all our studies together. I will show you this mighty God law which is abundantly able to place you in circumstances in which you have happiness, health, and success. I want to teach you that law. I want to help you, and I believe that you want to help me help you. So shall we get together here and now and do the little things I want you to do? As I said, after a while, when you have demonstrated something of this God law, you will be only too anxious to do it. But now is the time when you need to do them most, right at the very start. It is the law of the spiritual realm that the outstanding, predominating desire of a human heart be gratified. The fact that the desire is there is absolute assurance that the object of the desire is somewhere also. In other words, the creative law of this universe being responsible for all things created and for all things whichever will be created is quite capable of creating for you, or to cause to be created for you, the very thing you desire the most. This is probably what Jesus meant when he said, "According to your faith be it unto you." But a head faith is absolutely useless in this manner. The only sort of faith, or the only sort of belief which is effective in the spiritual realm, is the belief which will actually work for the desired things. Grasp the picture here that the spiritual realm is an unseen realm, and the power of the spiritual realm is an unseen power. But, although unseen, it is a very living, vital, potent, dynamic power. You cannot see radio waves, you can see the manifestation in the radio. You cannot see electricity, but you can see the manifestation of electricity in a light globe or in the electric chair. You cannot see the power of the creative life spirit, but you can see its manifestation in the human life. So do not try to understand the hows and the whys of this mighty law at this point, but do as I tell you for a little while until you demonstrate to your own satisfaction that such a power exists. At the present moment, you suspect that such a law as I am talking about exists. I know that it does. I have proven that it does. You suspect it does, but have never found or experimented with it. It is necessary, therefore, at this point for me to help you believe literally in the existence of this living God law. My little Alfred has just started to take lessons on the pipe organ in my home. When he comes home from school every night, he must practice for 1 hour, He has weeks and months and years of such practicing ahead of him. Now, what will be the final result? 3 years from today, Alfred will probably be able to play rings around me on the pipe organ, whereas today, he cannot play a note. All this little fellow is doing is impressing on the creative principle behind the universe, the thing he wants to manifest in his own life. And the first thing you know, he will walk to that organ and sit down with no music in front of him at all and play anything he has learned to play. The same methods exactly will be employed by me on the start of these lessons in your case. After 1 month, there will be so much of those music lessons in Alfred. He will positively know so much about playing an organ. Not much, 'tis true, but he will be able to actually go and do certain things which he cannot do now. This is a crude illustration, but it will put over to you what I mean and will give you an inkling of the methods of securing the help of the mighty God law of the universe in your own life. On awakening, I would like to have you take several long, deep breaths for a few moments. Not because this has any effect on the spiritual realm, but it has a mighty good effect on your physical body. And as you're going to enjoy increased life with its blessings from now on, it will do no harm for you to keep your physical body in good shape. If you want to make a habit to breathe slowly and deeply, filling the lungs to their utmost capacity without straining and then slowly exhaling, it will be a mighty fine thing. As you know, the blood is purified by the lungs through the process of breathing, and the deeper the breath you take, the purer will your blood be. Now, for the other part of this exercise, when you come home at night, or no matter what period of the day you have chosen to be alone with your lessons from me, I would like you to rest in an easy chair or lie on the bed or on the Davenport and physically relax. There need be no unnatural straining of any kind, but give your body a chance to rest. Breathe slowly and deeply, and then lay your lesson down. Close your eyes and repeat as many times as you care to, slowly and very quietly, the following sentence. I believe in the power of the living God. Repeat this slowly, anywhere from 30 to 100 times according to your own inclinations. Then, get on your feet and standing erect, if feasible, say the same sentence 3 or 4 times out loud. If there is no time around to annoy you, this would bother anyone else or for any reason would be inconvenient, you may omit doing this on your way to work in the mornings or whenever you have unoccupied moments. I want you to repeat this sentence mentally as many times as you can. The more times you repeat it, the more definite the result I'm after will be. There is a physiological law governing this simple little exercise, which I will explain briefly. When a thought goes through the human head, it slips through and is gone, making no impression of any kind. But if the same thought be repeated a sufficient number of times, a definite thought channel in the neurons of the cerebrospinal system is created, and that repeated thought becomes a very definite part of your mental makeup. In this course of instruction, I shall not attempt to make any psychological explanation other than this. I only mention this here to show you that this little exercise is scientifically correct from a psychological standpoint. If your work calls for concentration, you need not repeat this exercise while you are concentrating on your work. But in every leisure moment that you have until you receive the next lesson, I want you to do this little thing faithfully. You'll get a lot of pleasure out of it, and the first thing you know, there will come to you an entirely different feeling from any you have ever experienced before. And the chances are many to 1 that 2 weeks of this exercise will work a revolution in the spiritual part of you, for you certainly are a spiritual being, much more so than you are a physical being. This is as far as it is advisable to take you now. Do this exercise very faithfully and remember that you are the one who will reap the benefits and not me. I went through this a couple of years ago and I have told you what the material results have been to date, and I am not through yet. Let me say to you at this point And when you get to the place where belief in this God law is a material part of you, there will be no right thing you desire which you cannot get. You have a wonderful future ahead of you, whoever you may be, and will thank me a good many times for ever having called this work to your attention. In the next lesson, we shall deal with the subject of the subconscious mind. This mythical mind is what many would have us believe exists as 90% of a man's mentality. I do not believe in the existence of the subconscious mind, for I have proven the power involved to be far greater and more easily accessible power than that is. The next lesson will probably open your eyes a little wider, and I am anxious to send it to you as you are to receive it, but we will progress faster if we do not make haste along the way. A good many of my students have been failures a good many years, so they can well afford to spend the few months' time necessary to complete my instructions. I would esteem it a special favor if you have a snapshot or photograph of which you could send me. If you have one and wish to send it to me, I shall send you a picture of myself. If any question arises, or if there be any point in which you are not quite clear concerning this lesson, please feel free to write, and I shall give the letter personal attention. If I should be away, one of my assistants will answer the letter probably quite as capably as I could. 95%, however, of all the letters coming to me from students are answered personally. Don't forget, I believe in the power of the living God. And if you will do this faithfully, it will not be long before you begin to realize that there is in existence this dynamic law of which I am telling you, which law can operate from your own success, health, and abundant happiness and prosperity. Points to note, especially in lesson number 1. 1. You are now receiving instruction in finding and using the God law, which heretofore has been unknown to you. Bear this fact well in mind, anticipate it, be happy in this knowledge as it is unfolded to you. For the first time in history, scientific information regarding the literal power of the God law operating here and now is being given to the world by me. 2. You must be ready to discard whatever preconceived notions of God you may have. If those notions clash with the revelation of this God power as I shall explain it to you, I shall take nothing out of your life which is beneficial to you, and whatever I do take out, I shall replace with a more powerful and reasonable truth. All I shall do is to remove religious superstition regarding any God who operates in the future and after death, and replace it with a living, vital faith in a living, vital God law which operates here and now. 3. 99% of the human race is walking the streets today only half alive. This probably applies to you. You have not the faintest suspicion of the mighty, dynamic God law behind you and at your disposal. You live in a limited physical sphere. You are afraid of death. You know nothing of the existence of the God law I shall teach you about. You have seen superstition passing itself off as God, and you probably are at a place where you are about to admit there is nothing in religion and nothing to this God proposition after all. You are right in one sense, but you are wrong in another sense. 4. Prepare yourself to make up your mind definitely what it is that you need to make you happy, successful, and healthy. Be sure you know what this thing is at this point. Fix it definitely in your mind. You will need it a little later. 5. Don't forget, over and above any monetary consideration involved in this course, I want to help you. I will, if you let me. Cordially your friend, Frank B. Robinson. So that's lesson 1 in Psychiana. I found this very interesting. He goes right after what were at the time the Christian religions at the time, talking about a letter from Billy Sunday, and gives a pretty simple exercise which I'm going to do, and I will do my best to get the lesson 2 to you within 2 weeks so that we can try to do it in the time frame that he's talking about. So just repeat, I believe in the power of the living God, after waking up and taking some deep breaths, And please leave your notes about how this goes for you during the week if you test out this law, and we'll give it a try. What he's talking about is if you desire something, he makes this comment, which is consistent with what we talk about in reality transurfing, with what Frederick Dotson talks about, what Neville Goddard talks about. If you desire something, that means it exists and that you can have it, that the reality exists where you do have it. That is where that desire comes from. And he seems to imply that. I have a sense that this may be much more advanced than I initially expected, just because the year it was made, 1933. So this will be very interesting as we go to the next lesson. So please make a comment if you can, or let me know if you try this initial exercise, and keep an eye out in the next couple weeks for lesson 2, and we'll just keep on going with this. I think he's a very powerful writer, and he's speaking directly to me in many of these times. The things he's talking about doing are pretty simple, so why not? We'll give it a shot. I love trying things like this and different lessons, and if you're doing more than one set of lessons at a time, that's fine too, as long as they're not contradicting in any way. So I hope you enjoyed the first lesson in Psychiana about awakening the God power by utilizing this God law, and to see actual results. That is my certain hope for you as well. So let's give this a shot. Let me know how it goes. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. Welcome to The Reality Revolution.